Spiritual awakening for beginners. There are people out there that will have these types of experiences for no reason. Now, the danger is trying to figure it out. The moment somebody has an awakening and they go and start researching awakenings is the moment that they just start the slow descent all the way back into the ego. A spiritual awakening is the disappearance of the illusion of the ego, meaning all sense of brokenness, all sense of being not good enough, all internal monologues vanish, and the person experiences a surge in awareness, cognitive ability, and freedom, where the constraints the past has imposed on their mind are gone. And so the person loses all motive because there is nothing to fix or change about themselves. And they no longer have to narrate reality because they just see everything in a very broad and comprehensive way. And everything about their past becomes clear and reconciled. Now, the challenge with this is it can also present with mania. Because, see, the ego has this pernicious effect where the fear and all of the cyclical, involuntary, intrusive ruminations of the ego paralyze the human mind and keep the person in a state of despair and fear and regret, where they have to hide their inner emotions and they have to avoid everything in life to avoid being triggered. And so people are just avoiding being triggered in life, and so they avoid disappointment, they avoid failure, and all these prolific constraints become the basis of everything that they're motivated to do. But the person who wakes up in the awakening will see the illusion for what it is, and they will feel extraordinarily big, because rather than being this little character in this view of life, the character vanishes and they just become the view. That they become the present moment view with no experience of individuated personhood from the view. That it's not the world out there and then me over here, it's just the world out there is me. And so when you say the world is me, it just means that the experience of the way the world appears is the person now. And so it's kind of like going from having a little avatar character that you need to protect and hide. And you always have to think about this character. You have to think, oh my God, am I good enough to do this? Or is that going to get a rejection? Well, everybody's trying to convince themselves that they're good enough because they feel not good enough. Well, the spiritual awakening, that vanishes. And so what you find is this surge where the subconscious mind and the present moment experience of reality become unified. And for some people, this can be such a dramatic, or for all people, change that the things that they can see as possible become unlimited. That the constraints on their mind, their view of life and the future, disappear. And this is often why people experience significant grandiosity, because they can develop this Jesus complex, because they'll realize this must have been what Jesus had. And so they might feel like they are Jesus, and in a real way they are experiencing the same form of consciousness. And so the problem is that modern psychiatry and psychology would consider exiting the ego to be dissociative, when the truth is being an ego is dissociative. An ego is so disconnected because it loses awareness of the environment and thereby has to try to build narratives to replace the loss of awareness. And so they're always confused. They can never determine what's real. They need help. They need advice. They need second opinions, third opinions. They need therapy. They need pills. They need alcohol to talk to women. That they are riddled with fear and anxiety, and it destroys their physical health. And so the ego is a pernicious mental disorder that was called evil, or it was called Satan in the Bible. The talking voice of the mind is something that disconnects people, that it's also something that creates fights and arguments, because people traditionally associate internal chattering with thoughts. And these intrusive voices and thoughts are close to schizophrenia because they're involuntary, they're demonic, they're dementing, and they cause people to relive their childhood on a loop. And so the person develops prolific patterns of afflicted behavior and avoidances, And that is what you wake up from in a spiritual awakening. Now, you see, there's many methodologies that produce this effect, and there's been people like Jesus who actually had the capacity in conversations to lead people to these experiences, and I'm one of those people, that I can cause spiritual awakenings to emerge in a single conversation. That's what I call coaching. But you see, there's other people that have come along that did the same thing, and they could train other people on how to train other people. The problem is that these things in the form of seminars are so against the grain of psychology that you couldn't even talk about psychology, and because psychology is useless, that psychology is an abomination to the world of ontology and transformation. So if you ever listen to an Alan Watts is responsible for people like me because he brought these Eastern teachings to the West, and there were people who, in reaching these states of enlightenment, were able to develop more modernized ontological approaches through exercises in groups that would produce the same types of breakthroughs found in Zen meditation, for example. And so, when you listen to anybody that has enlightenment talk about psychology is a curse on humanity. Psychology is a religion. Psychology afflicts people with grandiose victimhood and has all these people walking around talking about their past with no power to overcome any of it because they don't want to. They want to entitle themselves to define themselves in the language of psychology and thereby just become stigmatized egos. And so there is no understanding in your head that telepathically engages with reality. And so all this magical thinking and manifestation bullshit, well, it's garbage. And so, the spiritual awakening is a real phenomenon. It has a neurological component. In fact, it's entirely neurological as well. And so, it just happens. And so the moment that the cognitive blockages of the fight or flight reaction are removed from the brain, the person will awaken from all of the past-based, fear-based projections that are all fight or flight and all based on this hypervigilance avoidance. And so that's all we're talking about. So, the spiritual awakening for beginners, if you want to try something right now, find yourself a mirror. Take a deep breath, make direct eye contact. Let's get you out of your head. Say this out loud and mean it. Do not understand it. Do not believe it. This is not an affirmation. Let me say that again. This is not a positive affirmation. This is not to feel good enough. The ego cannot complete this exercise because it'll figure it out. Trying to do everything perfect and right is the ego. Being confused is the ego. And so the ego is just a perfectionist trying to be good enough and failing. That's it. And so we let all that go. I give up the right to have the complaint that I am not good enough in my life forever. Just let it go. Say that again. See if you noticed a weight lift. I give up the right to have the complaint that I am abandoned in my life forever, and let it go. I give up the right to have the complaint that I'm a failure in my life forever. Let it go. I give up the right to have the complaint that there is something wrong with me. Let it go. I give up the right to have the complaint that I'm afraid in my life forever. Let it go. I give up the right to have the complaint that I'm paralyzed in my life forever. I give up the right to have the complaint that I can't in my life forever. Just be for a second. If you noticed anything, if you've noticed that it's quiet in your mind, what's that like? Unexpected, isn't it? If you're interested in learning how to wake up, it takes one coaching session with me. Click the link in the bio. I've got 3 options. You can do a private one-on-one. You can do a public one-on-one right on my live stream so other people can participate. That's half off. And if you want to do it in a group, we do this every Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Link in the bio, book yourself, and you will experience exactly what they're talking about when they say spiritual awakening. Let's go.